Profile involves, to an unusual degree, peer-reviewed publication in both the natural and the social sciences. She has published psychopharmacological research into the effects of drugs on learning and memory, and on gene expression in mammalian tissues. And within the social sciences, she has published on cognitive processing, self-esteem, emotion, and motivation. And most recently in the journal American Behavioral Scientist on political psychology and democracy, for which I was very honored to be co-editor. This latter article was part of a special issue of 6 essays on state crimes against democracy published in the journal's February 2010 edition. Ms. Manuel's research has been supported by scholarships including the prestigious Alexander Graham Bell Doctoral Award in Natural Sciences and Engineering, Research Council of Canada, and the Michael Smith Foreign Study Award to conduct research as a visiting scholar in the University of Florida's Biomedical Engineering Department. She will be giving evidence today on the subject of SCADs, State Crimes Against Democracy, and psychological resistance to alternative accounts. Please welcome Lori Manuel.
Thank you for the very kind introduction. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. And thank you to Judge Impozumoto and Professors Lee, Johnson, and Jenkins for taking the time to be present here with us for these proceedings. I'm honored and really quite humbled that I'm able to speak before all of you today, and that I'm speaking alongside Professors Griffin, Scott, and Senator Gravel. Aboard humanity and the utter madness of militarism, Dr. Martin Luther King had this to say more than 40 years ago about his responsibility to challenge his own government regarding its war on Vietnam. A time comes when silence is betrayal. That time has come for us. Even when pressed by the demands of inner truth, men do not easily assume the task of opposing their government's policy, especially in a time of war. And I knew that I could never again raise my voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government. I'm here to speak to you about the betrayal of truth that still continues today, and to break the silence about events that present a profound challenge to our most closely guarded beliefs about government and democracy. The public's attention must be brought to bear upon the state crimes against democracy related to the events of September 11, 2001. And the perpetrators and profiteers must be prosecuted for their crimes against humanity, crimes that have affected people worldwide, a decade past and continuing onward with no foreseeable end. These events collectively are referred to as state crimes against democracy, or SCADs, as Professor DeHaven Smith has labeled them and discussed with us at length during our first presentation at these hearings. State crimes against democracy are actions which are undertaken in direct violation of sworn oaths of office by officials in order to circumvent, exploit, undermine, or subvert laws, the constitutional order, or the public awareness essential to popular control of government. SCADs are dangerous to democracy because they are not isolated events, but a pattern of actions, or in some cases, inactions, which facilitate a progression towards closing down an open and free society into a police state run by a select few. The work I will be presenting is based on an international collaboration with 5 other academics, Drs. DeHaven Smith, Witt, and Hinson in the United States, and Dr. Thorne and the late Dr. Kuzman in Australia. My paper is one of the 6 journal articles published in the special issue of American Behavioral Scientist on state crimes against democracy, and it focuses specifically on scientific studies of attitudes, of biases, and faulty beliefs that can prevent people from processing information that challenges pre-existing assumptions about government, reasoned dissent, and public discourse in a democratic society. Now, all of the information I present is based on widely accepted scientific research. Some of the concepts and explanations are quite complex and replete with technical jargon. so I will do my best to simplify things where appropriate, but there will be some times when important distinctions between concepts require more technical terminology. Although there are many theories as to why some people refuse to look at evidence that the official account is false, they're not all equally valid theories. It is neither valid nor accurate to claim that just because a person will not examine evidence that the official account is false, they are simply in denial. The human brain is the most complex organism in the body, and thus the mechanisms by which the mind processes, interprets, and responds to information is equally complex. For example, the human brain is composed of hundreds of billions of neurons, each with thousands of synapses, creating a vastly complex and intricate neural network consisting of up to 100 trillion to up to a quadrillion synaptic connections. At any one time, this organ is processing an infinite amount of information, both from its internal and external environment, most of which we are unconscious of. However, it is often that information, of which we are largely unaware, that has the most significant influence over our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Even those thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that we adamantly believe to be consciously determined. Evidence from neuroscience tells us that the way in which we perceive the world around us is not necessarily as it is. For example, we assume that when we are looking at something, we are consciously analyzing it based upon the visual information that is entering the brain from the eyes. But this is not entirely accurate. In fact, visual stimuli transduced by the rods and cones in the eyes and sent by electrochemical signals to the central nervous system via the optic nerves does not go directly to the occipital cortex, which is the primary region responsible for processing visual information. Instead, it first goes to the lateral geniculate nucleus of the thalamus, another region of the brain that is a part of the limbic system and important to emotional arousal. To put this in simpler terms, this means that you can experience an emotional reaction to something before you are consciously aware that you have even seen it, which in turn then affects how you see it. Perhaps one of the most elegant examples is the discovery of what is commonly known by neuroscientists as mirror neurons. A mirror neuron is a neuron that fires in the brain both when an organism performs an action itself, such as reaching or grasping for an object, and it also fires when that organism observes the same action performed by another organism. Research by psychologists in this area also suggests that this may be one mechanism by which people come to internalize not only the behaviors of others, but their emotions and ideas as well. Since this is a relatively new area of research, I will instead focus on some of the more established social psychological mechanisms that may later be shown by neuroscientists to have a very biologically based origin. So to give you a brief overview, first I will present a framework for discussing psychological resistance that emphasizes the difference between a direct and an indirect approach to discussing evidence of state crimes against democracy, and that also recognizes the important role that the information environment and motivated reasoning plays in such discussions. Second, I will review one of the most important psychological foundations of democracy, which is political tolerance, and its corollary, political aggression. Third, I will give some examples of psychological constructs that can interfere with people's examination of the evidence of state crimes against democracy, such as cognitive dissonance, threatened self-esteem, and perceived threats to oneself or one's worldviews. Fourth, I will talk about the problems inherent in challenging people's assumptions about government, dissent, public discourse, specifically in discussing the evidence of SCAD, such as 9/11. Here I will explain how people's defensiveness interferes with the public debate that is crucial for the survival of democracy. And finally, I will discuss the implications of research in psychology for social truth and justice movements and reform initiatives using the events of 9/11 as a primary example.